I was absolutely terrified specifically of a hallucinogen. And this is a fear that a lot of veterans, now, 'cause I've talked to a lot of them, have expressed to me the same thing. None of us really want to consider that one because I even point this out in the book. We had this feeling, and it's true, like, I'm technically a mass murderer. I'm extraordinarily good at violence. And I don't really know that pouring a hallucinogenic on that is a good idea.
Hey, welcome to the Entrepreneurs in Recovery podcast. I am really excited for you to join me today. I have a really special guest named Clay Martin. Clay is someone who is a special forces operative. He is someone who has written many books. What I'm really excited about is our conversation that is geared towards veterans and some of the challenges and struggles that veterans go through, especially when making the decision to integrate psychedelic therapies or psychedelic medicines. And some of these fears that Clay shares about on this podcast. Clay also goes into intimate detail with one of his journeys. So I'm really excited for this interview. I think it's going to reach a lot of people that maybe are waiting to hear someone speak to this and be brave enough to share their experience and be able to share about all these different things that are keeping people stuck. And as we know, some people are, taking their lives over this PTSD and trauma that they have. So this is a really exciting episode. We get into many other topics and things, but I want to really thank you for being here. Tune into this episode and enjoy Clay Martin. Hey, Clay, welcome to the show.
Jesse, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just so the audience knows, I was just on a podcast recently with Scott Groves, mutual friend. And at the end of the show, we started to talk about veterans, and we started to talk about medicines and plant medicines and different things. And Clay came up and we were introduced like a day later. And then we were on a call the next day after that. And then a few days later, we're on this podcast. So I love the synchronicities and the synergy behind that. So really excited to dive in with you today and get into a lot of these topics. But before we do that, I would love for you to share a bit of your story, whatever you want to share.
Sure.
And then we'll dive into some of these things you bring up.
Awesome. So it's really fun. I've listened to a couple episodes of your show now too. So it's also awesome for me because this is the first time that I've gotten to discuss a lot of the things that we're going to discuss today with somebody else that has a plant medicine journey. Mm-hmm. So my story, I enlisted on my 18th birthday in the Marine Corps. I did all the cool stuff for the Marine Corps. I was a scout sniper and reconnaissance Marine. Then around 2003, I cross-decked over to the Army. I joined Special Forces. I was a Special Forces guy. I was in a dedicated counterterrorism unit where I was an assaulter and a sniper and taught all those things. And it kind of led myself into the same things that we do. I was a professional shooter for a while. But then I was medically retired in 2013. I got injured so badly that I was forced out of the service, and then started this weird arc that all of us soft guys do where you don't really know what the hell you're doing anymore, and you go off on this trajectory. And some rough spots there. I got divorced, all the stuff, like, a month after I retired, everything blew up. And then kind of rebounded in a way. Met my wife. We have 2 children now, and I was in kind of the gun journalism place, which is not really where I wanted to be as an adult. So I started writing books, and that was 6 years ago, and that's kind of led me to the place where we are today.
Yeah, well, that is the most humble intro of a story I've heard on my show, because your story is really fascinating. I've definitely, definitely have a lot of respect, and you've published many books. How many books have you published?
6.
6 books. So I was able to jump into one that you released this year. We're going to get into that. Before we do that, we'll get into the book writing, but you had a traumatic brain injury, correct?
Oh, several. Yes.
And part of that healing journey, right? You had a healing journey for your traumatic brain injury. Maybe you can speak to that. What did that look like? And then when did you start to arc into other healing types to heal?
Well, and it's actually funny how it took a long time to get there, actually. So I had a couple of traumatic brain injuries. I had scarring over like 50% of my brain. And most of us that are special operations guys have that. Even if we didn't take like a direct hit or something, it's all the repetitive explosions from training, all this stuff. And it's also things that we didn't really understand in my era. We didn't really understand the cumulative damage that comes from that. I didn't even start to understand it until I was already in the retirement phase. And they're like, oh, man, you're a mess, bro. I was like, oh, really? Great. Fantastic. So I went down a path that a lot of us do right after I retired. Became a very serious professional alcoholic, drank all the time, and didn't really actually stop that until much later. So I quit for a while, actually, when I met my wife and we had our first son. And, back to it. And I didn't actually stop that part until 2020, actually. And it was because I was forced to. I had a blood clot from an old war injury. It went all the way down the shoulder into both lungs. It was almost in my heart when I got to the ER. And so they put me on blood thinners, and they're like, basically, well, you can't drink at all while you're on these. You just keel over. And I was like, oh, well, that isn't great. So did at least make the adult decision there, and didn't drink by force for about 2 years. And that I never got a taste for it again. As soon as I got up with blood thinners, I just didn't want it again, which was very, very fortunate. Maybe it's because I knew what a mess it had made of my life before that. But that was really probably actually the linchpin to starting my healing journey. Because before that, I was just like everybody else. I was masking all the symptoms with alcohol, and that works for a while. It doesn't work very well, but it does work. So, now basically sobered up and stuff, I'm trying to figure out what else and what's wrong and what's actually the root cause here. And didn't do a great job of figuring that out on my own either, but I was very fortunate to meet somebody that is big into this space. And it was through one of the books, actually, because that book was published. So that this person, he kind of started me down the path of actually healing the traumas and stuff. And that was not easy to start either. I think most people this way, especially when you come from the super commando background. No, I'm top man. We'll just be top through this. It'll be fine. And that actually doesn't work. Again, it's like the booze. It can mask symptoms for a long time, but it doesn't really actually help. Eventually that crutch is going to give out. So anyway, met this person and started thinking more about actually healing, and that was both physical and mental. Because my body was a disaster by this point too. Not helped at all by the lifestyle leading up to this. So that was kind of where it started. I went and I got some experimental. I forget what the actual medical term for this is, but it's both magnets and electroshock to your brain in this weird kind of spaghetti bowl helmet. And that did a little bit for me. But at this point, I had already started talking to someone else about the plant medicines. And I was really scared to try them, actually. But I was at least, thinking about it. And it was funny. I talked to the neurosurgeon who was doing the experimental stuff, offline. She, closed the door. I'm like, hey, how about psilocybin? She's like, oh, yeah, that would absolutely help. I can't say that, doctor me, but, personal me, you should absolutely do that. And so that was probably actually the first time that I took it seriously.
It's quite a journey you've been on, to go through what you've been on and the things that you've seen, which we haven't really get into, the evil you saw firsthand, the traumatic things that you've experienced in your life and within war and all these things. And then you're obviously going to help heal your brain. You're finding these different modalities which Western medicine offers. And then, this person who you're training is like, hey, I tried this path with psilocybin, right? And
right, correct.
And he gives them to you, and then what happens from there?
Well, it's funny because I was around a bunch of these guys that are a bunch of my clients are very experienced all across the psychedelic space. So in fact, the person that recommended psilocybin to me first has done all the MDMA, 5-MeO, all the stuff, and has had access because he's pretty well off and pretty serious about this space to the best people on the planet to help him on his journeys too. So it's not just him, but I'm around all these guys, and I was really scared of trying one of these, as I call them in my book, drugs. All right, because especially as Nancy Reagan, child of the '80s, and I still have a Dare T-shirt somewhere, and I was you don't ever do drugs, and you'll cut your face off trying to get the spiders out, or some kind of crazy all the 80s myths, like you'll have acid flashbacks when you're driving down the highway 20 years from now, and whatever. Anyway, I was very anti-drug. And this is also very, very true for my generation of like special operations guy, because, very early on, you couldn't even enlist in my era if you'd done like serious drugs. Like if you'd done like, anything like Schedule 1, like heroin or mushrooms, which are Schedule 1 also, which is weird. Anyway, if you admitted to any of that stuff, like you couldn't even enlist. So for most of my generation of soft guy, they either lied about it or they were like me and they just never like just say no. And then obviously the whole time you're living with a security clearance, you're being randomly urinalysis. They can do it at any time. They can show up at your house on, midnight on Saturday and tell you to pee in a cup if they want to. So it's a thing that like you never even consider. So yeah, at first I was like, no way, man. There's no way. But meeting people that were successful in life, that were swearing by, these types of plant medicines as a help. It's kind of like the first time that you meet a pothead that's not like a high school, like, in high school, potheads that like their ambition is to like sit on the couch and eat Funyuns, right? That's as far as they go. And then later in your life, for me, it was in my mid 30s, I would meet like successful businessmen that were, awesome, or machinists or whatever, to smoke weed too. And you're like, oh, this is actually a wide scale. All right. You don't take like a puff of the devil's lettuce and then, turn into a almost kind of being dumped by the river. But, anyway, so I was around all these guys and, it's not like they were really talking to me about the plant medicines. They would if I asked, but mostly in like the off times of me not teaching them how to shoot guns, they're talking to each other. And that kind of, as the outside guy, that kind of piques your interest a little bit. So I was at least like curious, I will say. And then also I don't really listen to podcasts all that much, but I did happen to catch and kind of was forced to listen to it. The Joe Rogan episode with Paul Stamets, which again, at this point in my life, Paul Stamets is probably not a guy that I would listen to because, he's got his mycelium hat and he's kind of a nerdy dude, whatever. But I think I was in like bad conditions in the mountains or something. So that podcast, like locked on the phone, I had to listen to it. And it turned out I was like totally intrigued by it. I was like, wow, this guy's amazing. Anyway, those things together got me interested, as well as, if I'm being perfectly honest, like things were not going good, like for me, like in here. We as like ex-soft guys, we ended up afflicted by all these things. And it's funny because most of us think they're happening only to us. And we'll get to this part in a minute. Jews wouldn't tell me until like much, much later down the line when I was ready to hear it. But it's actually happening to all of us. We all have like super low testosterone for some reason. It's either injury from the war or stress of all those years or whatever. But when they check mine, I have testosterone like I'm a 75-year-old man. Very hard to like just get out of bed and function. No drive, no ambition. And there's all the traumatic brain injury stuff related, like sensitivity to light, all this stuff. And we have a very high suicide rate too, even amongst the soft guys. And that doesn't even take into account what I call the slow suicides, alcohol or this is not, well, it's not talked about very much. One of the greatest heroes of SF overdosed on heroin 6 months after he retired. All right. Yeah. It's crazy, but it happens. But for whatever reason, we don't talk about this stuff to each other. So I was having a lot of these same things, no energy, no drive, just just a disaster mentally. And so I finally got to the point that like, I will try anything.
Yeah. And it sounds like it was a point of desperation, because
it absolutely was.
You did have access to powerful people, entrepreneurs, ways of healing, but it wasn't enough, right? So you had a point of desperation, and you chose to give this thing a chance. And before we get into that, the journey, which you well documented in your latest book, which is, I definitely want to get into that. I want to talk about this fear of veterans. So the veterans that have the same fear, and can we get into that? This fear. That you touched upon in our previous conversation.
This is actually a really big deal. This is most of the reason I actually ended up writing the book too. So I was absolutely terrified to take this drug. And I wouldn't have been terrified. I've smoked weed, I've done other stuff. I wouldn't have been terrified to take heroin, for instance, because I've done morphine. I know how good that feels. I wouldn't have been terrified of any of those things. I was absolutely terrified specifically of a hallucinogenic. And this is a fear that a lot of veterans, now, because I've talked to a lot of them, have expressed to me the same thing. None of us really want to consider that one, because I even point this out in the book. We had this feeling, and it's true, like, I'm technically a mass murderer. I'm extraordinarily good at violence. And I don't really know that pouring a hallucinogenic on that is a good idea. And I've heard some other, because I've talked to quite a few, like guides and stuff in this space. And a lot of them kind of have this feeling like, oh, you're actually afraid of your feelings or something like that. And in this case, I think that they're wrong. We actually are all scared that we're going to go absolutely crazy. Because it's a possibility. And it's, especially if you've never done a hallucinogenic, you see that as a strong possibility. So that was the big fear. The second big fear, and this has also been expressed to me by a lot of dudes from my space, is we are afraid that we're going to get, so in touch with our feelings from taking these plant medicines. And so it's going to make us soft. It's going to take away our killer instinct and our edge. And that's a real fear too. That's not as big of a fear as the first one, but it is a real fear, especially if you've lived your entire life and everything you've done for, the past 20 years is based on this premise that like you can do violence like on command better than anybody else. So that's a very real fear too. And it's extremely funny, as also, like I said, a lot of veteran or a lot of soft guys especially have done these medicines, but they won't talk to you about them until you've done them too. And with that line of questioning, it's particularly funny. Just as the book was being wrapped up, a friend of mine that I haven't talked to in like 10 years called me about something else. And we, of course, because you're a new mushroom guy, you start talking about everybody, you're almost like the Mormons are like Jehovah's Witnesses of mushrooms. Like, have you heard about our Lord and Savior, Psilocybin? But anyway, it's true.
I get
it. Yeah, after you got to tell everybody. You're like, on calling people you haven't heard. Anyway, he calls me and we're talking about something else, and I bring this up, and he's like, "Oh, really?" He's actually been on the road for like 5 years, and he's taken a bunch of he's done a bunch of other medicines that I haven't. But it's funny, we talk about the first time, and he had all those same fears. He's like, "Yeah, I'm afraid that it was." I told, he had a shaman as a guide for the first one. He's like, I told him straight up, like, "I'm afraid this is going to turn me into like a little fairy Nancy, and I'm going to be I'm not going to be me anymore, and I'm going to be I don't know, picking flowers and petting butterflies or something." So those are real fears.
I'm so glad you brought that up. I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this be talked about. And to know how many suicides are happening per day with veterans and what's happened is just a tragedy, a travesty. So, with that in mind, like, what were for yourself, like, I've never heard that said too, like, you were a trained killer and you are going to now put in this hallucinogenic. You have no idea what the response is. And I've heard stories. So being myself in the 5-MeO DMT space and being trained in that space, I've heard stories of guides working by themselves, which is never recommended, and working with a UFC fighter that turned on them and beat the shit out of them. So you always want to have more than one person and a trained guide and all these different things. But you just never know. So always have a second person or even a third person. And so with that said, what did you expect the psilocybin mushrooms to do for you? Like, what was your expectation going into it? What did you think it was going to do for you?
No, that's really funny too. Because I didn't know. I don't even really know what my expectation was. Because again, if you haven't done it, it's hard for other people to tell you what it's going to be like. And they can tell you about their experiences too, which I think we can agree. Every psilocybin experience is unique, but there's a lot of things that are the same for everybody. So I don't really know what I expected. I think, if I'm being honest, I kind of expected to just see some funny colors. I don't know, dream about walking through the forest or some, nonsense like that. And then just, wake up and like, that was it. I didn't really have any like agenda either. I just, I kind of hoped it made me feel better on the backside was more the thing. It was, for me, it was more like, take the drugs, get through whatever crazy dream, nonsense happens. And then on the backside of that, wake up and be better. And then just forget about this part. This, this was irrelevant. And that is not what happened. Not even close, but that's what I expected.
Yeah. So, if anyone's listening and they want to hear more, we're going to dive into it now, but you can read the book for the specific details. But like, what's fascinating to me is that you spend most of your life as an atheist, right? Most of your life, you're an atheist. And I think you had an experience in 2020 and some experiences where, you started to, maybe there's more, but for this experience, you chose to do it, on a day, it was like a Tuesday, it didn't work out. And then on Wednesday, it happened to be a full moon and a super moon, a blue moon. Yes. And so, all these, like, let's say, synchronicities start to happen. Right. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious if you can kind of get into that, like that whole talk of being an atheist and then kind of this experience of this day and all these things aligning for you.
No, this was hugely important because I was an atheist for most of my life. And it's really funny too, as like a soldier, especially a young one, your first time going to war, like all your buddies that are religious are like, oh yeah, you'd be born again by the time we take our first bullet and all this stuff. And that was never true for me. I just kept the way that I was and saw some, crazy stuff across multiple tours. And none of that ever really bit me at all in a religious way. I was like, whatever, this is it. This is a chance that you throw the dice and this is what you've got. So I didn't start believing in anything spiritual at all. In fact, I would have called that, ghost stories. I actually told one of my stepdaughters when, she was like 15 or something. She's like, I'm scared of ghosts. Like, believe me, honey, if there were ghosts, I would be haunted and I'm not. So, but, that was kind of how I would explain the paranormal. Like, it's just, nonsense. But probably around like 2017, 2018, somewhere in that space, I did start to believe in the evil side. And it wasn't like one thing. It wasn't like, I saw the boogeyman one time. It was more like a chipping away as I saw the way that the world was working. And mostly that I saw that a lot of like the powers that be really do believe in this like, satanic murder children, human side. Like it became like so much it's hard to ignore. Like, okay. Like at that point, kind of like, even if it's not true, like they believe it. Some of them are going along with it, but some of them, obviously believe this. And if there's a dark side, then there has to be a light side, or at least we hope there's a light side. I guess there doesn't necessarily have to be, but it feels like there should be. So that was kind of where I was existing. I wasn't like looking for like a religious experience or to find God or anything like that. I was more in the camp of like, I guess if he shows up, we'll see if he's cool or not. And, I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to enlist in his army, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Yeah, please.
Well, it's just kind of where I was leading up. So even when I took the medicine or the drug for the first time, I was not expecting to have like a spiritual experience.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because you also mentioned about symbols and omens, and those are things that are starting to come to you before this, medicine experience. So, and look behind you, we could see these symbols and omens behind you. So I'm curious too, like, when did those start to happen? These signs, these omens, and how did that impact your spirituality before this journey?
That started around 2019, and I started getting what I can only describe as the vision for the book that I wrote prior to this, which is a fictional book called Wrath of the Wendigo. But it's the overall theme is actually about this. It's about a bunch of like ex-soldiers for the regime that end up having like a religious experience. It's more along the lines of like pagan or Norse, and I wasn't as deep into the spiritual space then, so I kind of couched that in the book as a way that, like, you could believe that, that was just their belief structure and none of it really had any impact, where you could believe that it was a real spiritual influence, but it wasn't like it was critical of the story. So I started having, that was like straight up like a vision, not like it's weird. It's not like it was a visual thing. It was more like it was in my head. It was a story that had to be told, and writing the whole book was like channeling. It was so fast. I wrote it in 30 days. But there were I started to see the omens around then too, because I didn't want to do that project. And so I started to have harder and harder omens to the last one that really convinced me that, okay, I will do this. This is extremely weird. I was building a deck for my wife. And that day I was like, I'm not writing a book. I don't want to do this. It's too crazy. I don't want anything to do with it. So I'm building a deck for my wife, and I've got a drill in my hand. And one thing that I never do, and I don't think anybody does, is hold the drill not by the handle, but by the head, so that the bit is sticking out. And my oldest son at this point is going through, and kids go through phases. He was going through a phase where he didn't want to hug or touch anybody. He just wanted to be like left alone, whatever. And for whatever reason, I'm holding this drill down by my leg. He decides he's going to hug Daddy. He runs over and hugs me and jams that drill bit into his nose right here. And missed his eye by like a quarter inch. And I was like, oh my God, I had to take him to the hospital, and he was fine. It was just a superficial. It didn't even hit the bone. It hit the like the flesh part down here. And it was superficial, and I was like, but I was freaked out. And I knew right in that moment, like, that was an omen. The losing an eye is an omen amongst the Norse beliefs. Okay. So I went home, and we put him to bed or whatever. And for some reason, I'm messing around with an LED flashlight. And LED bulbs last essentially forever. So I pick up a flashlight, and I have expensive flashlights. They're like Surefires and stuff. They're like, $400 flashlights that are tactical. And I turn this flashlight on, and the bulb blows. All right. I pick up the next flashlight in the drawer, and I took the batteries out of that one. I put them in this one, and I turned on, that bulb blows. Also an LED. I really don't like where this is going, but I go get a third flashlight with a different set of batteries. Oh, turn it on, the bulb blows too. Okay, all right, you got me. I'll write your book. I'll do it. so I do, and it was easy, and everything was fine after that. But that was kind of like the omen path for where I ended up.
Yeah, we're going to come back to your books because I'm an author. I've written 2 books, and I don't say that like, oh, I'm an author, I'm special, I'm a writer, I write every day. I don't. And I wrote my second book sort of the same way. Like, the book kind of wrote me in some ways.
Right. So, it's weird when that happens, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, when you start to write, you're like, what am I going to do? And then all of a sudden it's just like, it starts to write you. You know what to do. And like you said, you used the word channeling, 30 days, bam, you write this whole book. And I think that's really fascinating to really think about, because a lot of people want to write a book and they want this and they want that. It's like, maybe stop wanting, maybe just start to let go and let it come through. If it's supposed to come through, like happened to you. And it's really interesting to see all these symbols and things that were happening. And then it was like, you have to write this now. And, and then in 30 days, people go, oh my God, they take 5 years to write a book. And in 30 days, you're able to download that book. So this was kind of the foundation in some ways, I'm hearing, for your spirituality, I would imagine.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. No, it's absolutely true. And, there are spiritual themes in that book, like I said. So it's, I wasn't deeply into the spiritual space. Like I said, I kind of wove them in there in a way that they were like expendable. But if you read between the lines, you can really see it. But yeah, so, and there's a lot about, good and evil and kind of like the world that we live in right now. And it was wild because after I published that book, then the omens got stronger. Wildly stronger. Me and my wife, we have a bus. We drive around the country sometimes. We stopped in Montana on the side of the road, because this is where we usually camp, and we let the dogs out, and I'm like, the kids are asleep, right? 'Cause it's like midnight. I'm like, something feels like off, and so I pick up my gun that has a flashlight on it, and I turn around and I turn the light on, and right at the biggest black wolf I've ever seen in my life is 60 yards away from us, just looking at us, just looking, like, with my dogs present. I'm like, and just all kinds of weird stuff like that. So Yeah, it is strange how they start to speak to you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast, but my life has been full of that for years. I don't know when it started exactly. I was journaling every day. I journaled for 15 years straight. And I think that, during the journaling process, I started to notice signs. I noticed things that would just repeatedly show up. There would be certain animals that would show up. There'd be certain signs that would show up, and there would be certain numbers that showed up. And it just was undeniable because, like, for instance, my grandfather was born on 2/21/1918, and he fought in World War II in the Navy. And 2/21 ended up being the date I published my book. And it wasn't intentional. I wasn't like, okay, 2/21 has to be the date, but it was 2/21/2001. And so, 2021. So I was like, whoa, this is interesting. So, and my father, who I had no relationship with, he left at 3 years old, never came back, died of alcoholism. So I had this bitter resentment towards him and this like father wound, but his birthday is 11/22/1950, and 11/22 shows up all the time since I wrote that book in 2021. And I remember writing the book, and I was writing about my father, and I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And I had like this moment where I looked up and the clock was 11:11, and then I got this download from my dad. You can call it whatever you want. And he was like, hey, I know I wasn't there for you, but I'm here for you now to write this book. So go ahead and write the book. And I was like, oh my God. And then the next part of the book, the chapters started to come out, and I was like, oh, he's helping me on the other side, whatever that means. And I never thought like this. I never had that type of spirituality that was beyond what I was taught in Christianity. It was just, and so I can relate with that type of symbolism too.
Well, it sounds crazy, right? If you haven't experienced it, but omens are funny too, in that the more you pay attention to them, it's almost like they're trying to get your attention. And when you start looking and noticing, then they become a lot more. You'll see a lot more of them. But yeah, it's wild. It is absolutely wild. Yeah, it's almost like beyond belief until you've experienced it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and just like you said the key thing, like once you start to look for it, they're going to start to show up quite a bit. And they start to become, to me, hope. Like I get like, I'll be living my life and my life is as an entrepreneur. I don't always know where things are going to come from next, and inspiration, creativity. But then boom, there's a little symbol. I'm on the right path. If I feel, I'm feeling a little depressed or anxious, boom, something shows up to remind me, like, keep going. It's like, okay, all right.
And that's exactly it. It's all it takes. As soon as that little bump to keep you on the path. Yeah. No, it doesn't have to be something crazy like the clouds part and they speak to you. Yeah, no. Those little things make all the difference. Yeah.
So let's talk about this journey. So this first journey, you have never done psilocybin before. You are about to embark on this. So let's talk a little about this journey. Now, let me preface this with people who are listening, and this is the only episode you've ever listened to on my podcast. Okay. Understand that set and setting are extremely important when you are doing these psychedelic medicines. Even if it's just non-psychedelic, you're doing ketamine-assisted therapy and stuff. I mean, you're going to be in a safe set and setting, hopefully. And that's really essential so that you don't injure yourself, kill yourself. Things can happen because you just don't know what's going to happen with outer body experience. You just don't know. So I just want to preface, like, go back and listen to some of my podcasts where we talk about this stuff about psychedelics. This is not the episode we're going to get into that. I just want to preface it with that because your journey was very, you just were like, F it. So let's get into the journey. Right. And I want to get into some of these things that you saw on the journey. So
I definitely want to preface this too. I did my first, in fact, I've done almost all of but certainly my first one alone. And I failed to understand the danger. And now also, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but now that I've guided a few people, I would say the first time, don't do it alone. All right. Unless you just feel like you have to, but it's always better to have a guide or somebody to sit for you or something. But I didn't. So whatever happened. And I came out okay. I just don't recommend it. So finally I get to the point of desperation. I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. Like, I'll try anything. We'll get this done. And it's funny because I work from home and my wife's home all the time and my two little kids. So things don't always like line up. Plus, I'm a morning person. My wife's a night owl, so she likes to stay up late, and that's kind of like her time after the kids go to bed. That she, does her focus on her, and that's totally cool. But I also, and maybe this has something about like the health of relationship at the time, and this is also like a learning point from the first one. I didn't tell my wife that I was going to do this because I thought that she would, not approve of it for various reasons or whatever. So I just didn't tell her, which is not optimal. So anyway, I'm going to do them on a Tuesday. And at this point, I know nothing about setting really. I'm like, I'll be comfortable in my garage. It'll be fine. Tuesday, I don't know. I'm really tired. She stays up later than normal. It's not going to work out. So I end up doing it. I'm like, okay, I'll just go to bed. Now I wake up the next day, like redoubled fury. Like, this is going to happen. And it just, like you said, it happened to be, and it was almost a year ago. It was a year ago this month. Whatever the super moon was, full moon that only happens once every 15 or 20 years. That was Wednesday. So everything just falls into place as things sometimes do. Bam, 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 bam. I end up taking a nap late in the afternoon, so now I'm good to go. I've got energy for days. She goes to bed way earlier than she normally does, 9 o'clock or something. Kids are in bed, tucked in with a teddy bear by, I don't know, whatever. It's all crazy. I'm like, okay, this is how it's supposed to go down. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. Well, also being legitimately afraid of the drug. I do it like we would at SEER school for an unknown plant. SEER school is a survival, evasion, resistance, where they teach you how to live in the woods, wherever. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I take a little piece of mushroom and rub it on the inside of my elbow and my wrist to make sure I'm not allergic to it. And then, take 0.01 grams and put it under my tongue and spit it out. Make sure that I don't have a heart attack or something. All this stuff that ends up, feeling ridiculous later. But that's what I do. So then I'm also trying to figure out my dose. I'm like, okay, well, everybody says you need to do 5 is a heroic dose, and that's maybe it's a little crazy for a first one. But I do want it to do something. So I settle on 4.2, and I decide to take it, half and half. I take the first half so that it's going to be enough that, whatever happens maybe starts to happen. And that way also, if I don't like it, I'm of the mindset okay, maybe that'd be enough that I can just handle it and, throw up in the yard or something and it'll be okay. And, I've also got the fear also that, somehow I'm going to be in the hospital later that night, get my stomach pumped, having to tell the doctor that, I took some ditch medicine, some mushrooms that I found in the forest or something. I had them from a really high quality source, but, these are all like natural fears. Anyway, so I take the first half of the dose, and so that's about 2.1 grams. And the other thing that's weird about psilocybin is how long it takes to kick in. Because it usually takes an hour to kick in, I guess. And so that's a long time to just kind of be waiting. And if you're a little bit of an anxious person too, you feel a little stomach cramp, you're like, oh my God, am I dying? Is that my appendix bursting? What's happening to me? But none of that happened. Finally they kick in, and wow, it starts to be an experience like no other. I don't know that a lot of people talk about the euphoria that comes with psilocybin, or maybe that's abnormal. I don't know, but I got that one big time. Whoa, it felt really, just really good. Everything's gonna be okay. And I started to see some of the visualizations and stuff. And the first part of this was very mild. I saw cool stuff, I trained with angel wings and fun stuff. Nothing was really that serious to start with.
Yeah, and so at the beginning you're probably like, okay, cool, wow, I can handle this. This is no big deal. This is the experience, but it was not the experience that was to come. Right. And that's often the case, right? So we expect one thing, and then something else can happen, and that's why we when we do these experiences, have someone guiding you or have someone there, but at the same time, this is what was supposed to be in this moment, and right. For you, And so what happened after that moment? And, I know the details, but
All right.
I'm really curious to hear about this.
So, I've not done MDMA or LSD or any of the synthetics, but what everyone tells me that's done both is that plant medicines have like a consciousness and synthetics don't. So you get different experiences from the two. But in my limited experience of psilocybin, mushrooms will talk to you, especially when you get some on board and you have a little bit like floating around in your system. So I do the first half, and everything's fine. I'm laying down in the garage, feeling all happy or whatever, and they do talk to me. They're like, "Okay, well, like, are we cool?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're cool." I'm like, "Well, do you want to go deeper?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And they're like, "Okay, well, if you want to, take the other half." So I do. I take the other half, and it doesn't take very long for that to kick in. I don't know if this is some metabolism thing where it kicks in, but I take those and then almost immediately go way deeper than I thought was possible. So the first thing the mushrooms are like, "Okay, man, you got some stuff on board now. You're laying on lawn chair pads in your garage. This is not the most comfortable place to be. Like, do you want to go in the house?" Right? Because again, like, you're afraid, like, you want to be away from the wife and kids. I'm in my detached shop. It's hot. I'm laying on the concrete on couch, outdoor furniture. It's ridiculous. So it's like, you're going to want to go in somewhere and get comfy for this because it's going to be real. And I'm like, oh, okay. At that point, I'm like, I just make a terrible mistake. But anyway, so I go in and I go to the guest room, and then things get just absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so I love the way we're doing this too. There's so much build up. So you go in the house, and there's some things that I really want to talk about, but you talk about however you want to go into this. But one of the things that you saw and that you've seen in journeys afterwards, which is really interesting. I don't know if this is the step to jump to right now, but you can come backwards if you want. But you saw a golden city, right? So
yes.
What was that about? And if you want to back up a little bit and get to the golden city part, but I'm kind of curious of how that's sort of like the pathway that the consciousness of these mushrooms are bringing you to.
This is important because I actually I did not see the golden city until this next part. The first time, the initial like half dose, that was all just, I mean, like I said, it was hallucinations, but the same way that you could like be, overly drunk and see stuff in the woods. It was different. After I loaded that whole dose on and went in the house and got comfortable was the most important thing. I think this goes back to like sets. I went to the guest room and, like I have a real bed, like, sheets and stuff, and pillows. So I was way more comfortable, but pretty quickly after that, I went right to a place that I would go on all my other journeys after this. I call the Golden City. And, I don't know if this is just, what my brain processes is like the loading screen before you go to the spirit realm or what. But it's just that basically it's a huge, kind of like old Roman's not quite right, but kind of that ancient style of city. And there's, big buildings, big columns and stuff. That's all made out of like, not like gleaming gold, but more like a tarnished gold kind of. So it's a little bit shiny, but it just basically goes on forever. And that's a place that I would go to almost every other time that I take psilocybin. I go there to start with. So I go there, and it's probably important at this point to bring up also like and you see the stuff I was not like a Viking dude. Or I was not like into that styles of myths. That was not my jam. In fact, if you had to, have me pick anything at that point, it probably would have been either Greek or, if I'm being totally honest, I was much more for like military philosophy into like Eastern tradition, samurai and Book of Five Rings and those types of things. So I was not really like a Norse guy. So I still to this day don't really know why it presented things in the way that it did. But Anyway, so go through the Golden City, and then things start to get really, really weird. And I'm not sure how far do you want me to go into that part? Because I will go as far as you like.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should go as far as we can. I think, you were having this dialogue with the mushrooms, which is very interesting. Yeah. And not everyone has this experience. So, my opinion about this is I don't know if this is true or not. And then people can come on as scientists and prove it wrong or right. But, people come into this life, if I don't, if reincarnation is real or not, but I feel like you went through this incredible life, and it was very challenging. And the things that you saw in war and the things that you've seen in the last, 10 years, 4 years, especially with awakening to the world and in the stuff that we see, the darkness, you were shown that, okay? Not everyone sees that and gets to see that. So I think it's interesting, the consciousness of this medicine to show you these things, especially as growing up as an atheist. It's like, hey, I understand like why you chose this path and this is the way, but I'm going to show you something more now. It's time for you to see this. So it's really fascinating to see that and why you were shown this. So yeah, the conversation with the mushrooms, I don't want to skip right to this part if I'm going to miss some details, but sure. One of the things that, that you said to the mushrooms was, you want to repair yourself and you want to help my people. So maybe you can kind of talk about that. That was very inspiring.
So, okay, no, absolutely. So, again, not knowing anything, especially on this first trip, I was totally having a conversation with them. And that feels like when it happens, it feels like just a totally normal thing to do. Like you're talking to you talk to them, like it's being nice, or, I don't know, it's like a polite conversation. But there was definitely something conscious in charge of this, because it was asking questions, and not even just asking questions like, do you want this to happen? It was asking questions that were leading questions, like, okay, you have to answer this back, and then you could kind of tell that was shaping the journey. So it did ask what I wanted, and that is what I asked. I asked for repair for me for my damage and my and I didn't mean that just in the physical sense either, but in the trauma sense, or what's helped me be, who I'm supposed to be, or be someone that's, functional person for my, just something to that effect. And, also for my people, because that's one thing that I have seen, especially as I've awakened over the last 10 years, is this entire system that we live in the entire world is oppressive and demeaning. And, there's a lot of evil and a lot of things that I don't even think we see, because we're just accustomed to it. So things are not great. Things could be so much. I mean, if the entire human race was unified and let's heal up and evolve and make everybody happy, like we would be in a totally different place than we are now. But neither here nor there. So those were the things that I asked for. And so the next thing that happens is, I forget exactly how this conversation, I don't even know if there was an answer to that, but it was like, okay, well, here's the sword. I'm like, that's weird. Because again, I don't know anything about fighting with a sword. I don't even know how to hold a sword right, if we're being totally honest. Not like I have a background in that, but I'm like, okay, well, we got the sword. And like I said in the written part there, when somebody hands you a sword over there, they expect you to need it like immediately. And so that was what happened. So I get the sword and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And it's gold hilted and, all cool or whatever. But then immediately I start facing things that even at the time in the mushrooms, I know are constructs, because they're more like statues than things. But all this crazy stuff, like, a statue of Baal, and a statue of, some other kind of like demonic thing. And I just know instinctively at that point that that's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm also getting like emotionally invested in this too. So I'm smashing everything and I guess that was part of the test. I don't know why that was the test, but that was the test. So I think back to that time is immediately what happened next. Yeah. So part of this is like, I can feel like the fury, right? Like I want something to bleed too, which is, not a nice way of saying, but it's true. All right, especially when you're facing things that that inspire what's disgust in you. That was one of the things you want to see. You want to actually hurt things. You want things to bleed and die. So I'm not getting that, but I'm getting a little bit frustrated with the process. So the next thing is like, yeah, this is where we took a break. All right, so this is a weird thing too, and this is something that I would experience every other time on psilocybin as well. Like I would get to a certain point, and then the mushrooms they don't necessarily say like it's time to take a break, but they like imply that. They're like, okay, so let's relax for a minute. And it's funny, all the visions go away, and I'm at least just back in the space, and I can't even like deny that it's time to go take a break. It's time to go take a break. But this is my first time. So I thought like the trip was over. I'm like, all right, well, that lasted like, an hour. I'm like, well, I got, maybe I bought bad mushrooms or something, because I heard this goes on for like 6 or 7. I'm like, that was all weird. All right, though, whatever. So I go downstairs from my house, and I'm like, well, I need to, pee and drink some water. And that was a little bit of a weird thing. And so I'm doing that. And then I go outside, and that was where, things turn like really, really strange.
Yeah. So now you're outside. It's like, who knows what time it is, whatever crazy time it is. And, you're outside and, no one's watching you, being monitored. You're just like, okay, I'm going to go outside. And then, so tell us like what happened. I know some of these things started to happen to you, and
sure,
became animalistic or whatnot.
So it's funny too. Like, this is one of those things like I wish I'd taken notes on, because I was actually keeping really good track of time for some reason while this happened. It had been a very short. It had been like an hour for reals. But I'm like, okay, this is whatever. This is a weird thing, but maybe I got bad mushrooms or whatever. And I go outside, and there's actually a huge tree, like an old growth tree. My house is from 1910. There's an old growth tree in my backyard that on this particular night shields about half of the backyard from the. But I don't even know why I go outside, but I feel like I need to, and I'm naked. That's how I do things. So I'm like, well, I don't know. I need to go outside or something. So I go outside, and I start walking across the shadow of this tree. And when I step foot into the moonlight, things incredibly weird. To the point that even having like described it in the book, like I have a hard time describing it now. Even when I was writing, like it's very hard to get across like how nut bar things become. As in like an instant, like I understood where all the stories of werewolves come from, all across European, especially myth, and as I feel it, as the moonlight touches me, like I feel myself like morphing into something else, and it feels like it's really happening, and it's crazy. And like feel this like power rising, and like fur and claws and hands, and it's insane. Feel the muzzle and the teeth, and it's insane because I a couple times during this I open my eyes and I look at my real body. My real body's fine. It's fine. Like if I open my eyes, like everything's normal. Like it's still me. So I'm existing in this place where one thing is happening, like in the spirit realm, while at the same time, like nothing is happening. And knowing that those two things are simultaneous is one of the craziest things about this to this day to me. So at first I'm freaking out. I'm like, holy shit, am I actually turning into a wolf right now? And like, look at my hand, like, no, I'm not, but I am. And just feel this like primal power. And I'm actually resisting it a little bit too, because I've got like a rational part of me that's no, this is, is this the part where you go axe murder the neighbors? Like, no. But it basically becomes, I don't want to say it's irresistible, because I feel like I probably could have stopped it if I wanted to, but I didn't want to stop it anymore. Can I just stop you for a second here? Sure.
There's a lightning storm and thunder smashing my place right now. So when I talk about omens and symbols, I have done 38 podcasts. Never has this happened. And there's lightning striking right over here. So keep going. Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's why that stuff happens.
Yes.
And anyway, yeah. So at some point I just feel like I don't want to resist this anymore. And so I don't. And, again, almost impossible to like fully describe. But it is like the primal power is just there, and I'm down on all fours, like howling at the moon and just gnashing teeth like a fucking lunatic, for being totally honest. But I mean, I felt it, and I was like, and I mean, it was amazing, but also like kind of terrifying at the same time. I mean, what is going on here? And there's still like two parts of my brain, just like the rational part that's like, oh my God, like what? And then the bigger like conscious part is like, and yeah, so get done with like the howling part and stand back up, and I still feel like I'm like a hybrid now of like a wolf and a person, even though I can see, like I got real hands, like no claws or any weird shit, but I'm just like, and like okay, it's kind of feel really, really weird, and like, okay, this journey is not over actually today. Like this is basically what the conscious part goes back to. Like we're not done. Like we're not even close enough. Like, okay. So I feel like at this point, and I don't know how long this takes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour, like I have no idea. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I need to go back to, the soft, fuzzy place and finish whatever journey that we're supposed to be on today. So, go back to the house and like, snapping my teeth at shadows now, like, and feeling just incredibly, incredibly strange. But go back upstairs, get back in bed, and I close my eyes and kind of dive back into the space. This is something that I'll understand later through different journeys, but I don't really understand that because it's my first time. But, with psilocybin especially, like you can either like stay up on the surface, all right, or if you focus, even with a small amount of the drug, you really focus and want to go on the journey, well, then you can dive, really far or to the limits of wherever you're supposed to dive that time. So I guess instinctively, I know that it's time to dive back in. So close my eyes, get the breathing back to where it's supposed to be, and go back to the space.
Yeah. So you go back to the space. I know what happens next. I want to let's get into that because I know that you were you felt because it's like now you're playing in the spirit world, right? You're playing
without question. Without question. Yes.
So your physical brain is probably like, I'm too tired, I can't do this. Continue on, maybe. But in the spirit realm, it doesn't matter. You're still in this character, this what's the word? Avatar.
Avatar. Yes.
Yeah. So let's get there, and then I want to go to a couple other things, but sure. I want to hear about this part.
So I think that's actually a very important point that you bring up. That was the first time that I knew that like we were in the spirit world. Before that, it could have been like, oh, I'm hallucinating, or whatever. This is what my brain thinks it is. That this is what my brain does on drugs. Where now we're like firmly in the spirit. That's where we are, like without question. So I'm like, I get there, and the mushrooms are now having a different conversation, or at this point, an entity. It's no longer the mushrooms; it's an entity. It's like, okay, some form of conversation, like, well, you seem like you liked that. I'm like, yeah, that was I do like this. And it was like, okay, well, if you want this, if you want this gift, there's a price, and you have to be willing to pay it. And I'm like, now leaning back on like Judeo-Christian belief, I'm like, oh, hold on, like we're not making deals with demons like day one here. Like, whoa. But I'm like, okay, well, what is that? What's the cost? And it's like, well, you have to feel the pain of the deaths of everybody that went before you. And I don't know what that means at this point. But I'm like, okay, well, even like say, my immortal soul, or, cut off one of your children's fingers, some crazy stuff. Like, you just got to feel some pain. Like, okay, well, I can take pain. That seems fair. Plus this other, outside, so I like this. This was good. I like where this went. So I will pay your price. And I don't regret that decision, but what happened next was incredibly weird. It was like being on a giant, like universe-sized tree made of blood vessels. They kept transporting me to these different times where people with the wolf spirit had been killed. And so it was like dying over and over and over and over again for what felt like centuries. Like time stopped as far as like, time on your watch goes. And just getting, stabbed and burned and ripped apart and all this crazy stuff. And having the what do they call it? What's the term that they use for this? Psychosynaptic reactions. Like I'm tweaking out and twisting around and I mean, really felt like I was taking all this punishment and, it was talking to me as this was going on too. It's like, well, this is how we make you unafraid of death, like for real. It's like you just felt all the death and you're not afraid of it anymore. And this went on for like a very long time. And, then that part was kind of over. And then maybe one of the weird parts of this whole journey. So like, I'm exhausted. Like I'm just flailing around. I'm like sweating. Like I'm totally wasted. And, in the entity is like, okay, well, good. So you passed. But, the bear has showed up to offer his challenge. I'm like, oh, son of a bitch. And it didn't matter because the wolf spirit, which was the one that had been with me through this other thing, just went over and ripped its head off and like threw it across the room. Like, no, not today. And that was, and then I kind of came out of it again. And it was incredibly weird.
Man, I just, that's why I want to spend so much time on this, because here it is, your first experience, all these life experiences you've had, and even this idea of, not really having a connection to the spirit world much.
Right.
And then this whole thing is like, hey, there is this world here, and here
right.
it is. And we're going to show you
right.
these things. And you're saying yes to it, which is really important. You're not afraid. You're like, yes, I will go forward. I will complete the task, what I need to do. And then, I think this was one of the final tasks, I think, was to defeat the bear and
kill the bear. Yeah.
Kill the bear. So what happened with that? And then we'll go into something around this.
Okay. So that was actually like none of it. Like, just killed the bear. Like the wolf bear was like, ripped his head off, threw it across the room. Like, okay. And that was part of the deal too. And it is also funny because again, like I knew almost nothing about Norse beliefs specifically when this was all happening. Anyway, so the entity is like, okay, well then, wolf spirit is your guide. And, because this happened, like you can command the bear spirit too, if you need it, but this is your primary, and, everything's cool. And I wondered I don't remember exactly how it told me this, but basically it told me like, enjoy the hold music while we return you to normal life. And so then we just went back to what I knew was like complete, just almost like I'm asleep, like, butterflies and weird stuff. And that was a while for me to like cool down. And then the trip was over. And so went from, in the course of, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours, however long that was, atheist with, maybe there's some spiritual stuff to like, oh my God, like there's a whole, like the whole spirit realm, that's all real. That's all real. It's all real. Not like I saw it because I was high, like I was there. And it's very, very real. And man, all I could think at that time was like, I needed some red meat. I needed like food. It's still dark. I'm downstairs, like trying to defrost a steak in the hot spray of the sink, start the grill. And, unbelievable first experience.
All right. Yeah. So then to just cap the whole thing off, like, okay, I've had a visceral experience that I know is just not me hallucinating for 6 hours. And you've had confirmation. I've had the same. I've had journeys where I was, throughout my life, I was, indoctrinated with Christianity, and it helped to build a spiritual platform for me. But, I never experienced, let's say, the spirit world. I never had a visceral, like, oh my God, I've experienced it until I got into various plant medicines. And so I can really relate. And I had one in Costa Rica, and then I want to come back to the symbol that happened in the morning. But I was in Costa Rica and I had an experience with peyote, and because you talk about the wolf spirit, I had this experience with the eagle, and I had this near-death experience 4 to 6 hours into the journey where I had this experience with the eagle, the spirit of the eagle. And So I can relate when you talk about the wolf spirit. And I know to some people, they're like, what are you guys are just getting high in the jungle or high in your
Right.
house.
Yeah.
But it was so real that when I came out of it, I was back and I was still in the medicine, but I was back enough to journal and to I didn't even need to journal it. It was just now embedded now into my body. And I carried that with me to this day. I still carry that with me. I see eagles all the time here. You know, it's just something that's transformed. And I want to get into that and how the takeaway from this experience is really profound. So, but before we do that, let's talk about what happened that morning to kind of solidify that this was just hallucinating.
So, you know, and again, especially when you come out of like the first one, I am questioning this to, you know, because now I'm like, I'm coming out of the medicine or sobering up, however you want to phrase that. But you know, the drug or the medicine is wearing off, and I am like, because it was so wild. I'm like, you know, holy cow! Like, was that real, or like, you know, am I just an awesome hallucinator? Because it is. It's a big piece of you is so like viscerally there. Of course, that was real. But especially as really a rational Western men or, you know, whatever, we're always going to have this other piece of like, nah, come on, dog. Like, that's like, hold on. So now I eat my steaks or whatever, and I have to have like real fire because I want that too. I want like real fire, not like, you know, candles or gas. I want fire, and I eat the food and, you know, feed the dogs. And I'm kind of sitting around, and it's still dark, and the sun is starting to come up. And it's almost like something was going to catch me on that, like, you're going to rationalize this away. And it was like, no, you're not. You're not. So just for a moment, like I go instantly all the way back to like hallucination overlay. And I see an owl made out of like panels of metal, and he's got a wizard hat on and one eye. And he doesn't say this, but it's more like it's more like a telepathic thing of like, you know, this is the All Father telling you like this is real. And it told me 3 words that are basically like my authenticators for anybody else that walks down this exact same path. And like, and then it goes away, and then it's like back to like total normal. Like, okay, well, a lot of people do know this, and I know this now, but I didn't know at the time. But owls are actually associated with Odin from Norse mythology as well. He has the ravens and the wolves, but he has an owl too. But that's the owl by itself is not enough to. I didn't know that, and I know I didn't know that, but that's not enough to like tilt it over the edge. The words though were. So I take one of those words and I'm like, I look it up, and there's nothing. It doesn't exist on like Google, which is you know, pretty. Google has a couple of words. I'm like, all right. So later on that day, I call up my friend whose wife is Norwegian. And I'm like, hey, man, could you ask your wife what this means? And he asked her, and she's like, that doesn't mean anything. It means it's 2 words put together from Swedish and Finnish or something. It's nonsense. Like, okay. Hang up the phone. He calls me back like 2 hours later. Well, that word had bothered her, so she asked her mom. Her mom didn't know, but it bothered her, so they asked the grandmother in the old country. And it actually did mean something in Old Norse, something very specific. And he called me back, and he's like, yeah, this is what it means. And they wanted to actually know how you know. White guy from Texas. And so that was it. I was like, okay, that was it. That was as real as it gets.
Yeah. What was the word? I got to know now. I think I know.
I can't tell you, man.
Oh, you can't.
It's part of the,
perfect.
No, it's, it's part of the authenticator. Yeah.
All right. So I understand that too. All right. So, wow. Thank you for bringing us through that journey. I feel really honored to receive it. And I really love, the way you told it and how much you remembered for a reason. And I'm curious now with these experiences, what are your takeaways now? I mean, how has it impacted your life? And, you know, you think about how many veterans, how many are suffering, and how has that impacted your life, that very first experience?
That very first was, I mean, so powerful. I felt one, even aside from like just, you know, cast the visions away from it, like forget that even matters. I just felt so much better in a physical way. I felt like I mean, this sounds crazy, but I felt like my brain kind of like knitted back together. It was almost like for like a week after, like I could feel like neurons like rejoining, which again, it sounds crazy, but it felt like that. I felt so much better. I felt like I had left a lot of like, garbage and trauma for that matter away somewhere else. I'd like dealt with it, like it's over, it's gone. And I mean, this kind of sounds crazy too, but this is actually true. I was not what I would call like a hyper confident person before this. And that sounds kind of like, nonsense, like, oh, you did all this cool stuff and you were, a ninja and whatever other, stuff. Doesn't matter. I still had these like feelings of inadequacy and it's not enough. And, but I didn't feel good. And when I would even, deal with client stuff, a lot of the confidence that I put on was false. It was absolutely true. That's why it was so hard to maintain for like more like a week or so at a time, is because it's false confidence. I felt like all of that went away in the wake of this, even just in like the weeks after this and continuing to this day. Felt like I was like really myself again. Felt like I had real confidence in things. And I mean, in a lot of ways felt like a completely different person. Maybe not completely different person, not quite right. I felt better than I had since I was in my 20s. And I felt like I was like the best version of me. Like I was still me, but with all the bad stuff gone and like the good stuff, like elevated a couple steps, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. So I know that, there's many people who are listening to this, as many men that and women who have had these experiences of war and PTSD and whatnot. And, they go and they maybe do some research and they go, no, I'm not going to work with a therapist. And then they look at maybe a shamanic route of ayahuasca, or they go, I'm not going to do that either. But then they reach out to you because they're so desperate. So what would you say to those guys? And I know you've personally guided some of them because of this experience. So what can you say to speak to that part?
Man, it's been wild because not only have I guided and this is again, like, this is something that I want to get like training on because I don't know what I'm doing right now. I just run it on instinct. But a fair number of guys that I know would not have sat for anybody else. Wouldn't matter what your training was or what your tradition was. It wouldn't be a therapist or a shaman or anybody else. They would only like sit for somebody else that has like lived a life like them. And I can see where that comes from. I really can. A couple of other guys actually have gone down the exact same road I did. After I talked to them, like, hey, I felt better after this. They've gone the solo route, which again is rife with danger, but for certain people that's going to be the only way that's right too. But especially for the guys that I personally have sat with, that one's really important, especially for the first one, because it is scary, and I understand why it's scary. I hope actually that by me telling my story and putting the book out there, that more guys from our community will come forward that have done it, but it is going to be so helpful for you. Now, it's not a magic pill either. You can't just, eat some psilocybin and everything's fine. When I look back on it, I had done a lot of like the work. I was already like trying to walk down a healing path for like a year prior to this without the drug. Mm. And the drug, I think, just made this like wild breakthrough that I was like so much better. Mm. I could see that going. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead. Yeah.
I can see this going both ways. I believe that if you took the drug under the right setting with the right person, that would help you start. It won't be an instant cure, but it will help you start walking down the path and you can do it again. All right. If you've already done some like therapy or some healing work and you take the drug, that is going to be sometimes at least the miracle breakthrough. But the two in tandem, I believe is the way.
Yeah, and I think you said something really important, which we talk about all the time on my podcast, was integration. So you already had a meditation practice, you had yoga, you had these things that are really helpful for the integration of these experiences because, there's a saying, and, whether it's aligned with people or not, using psychedelics without integration is just drug use. People will say that. And in many ways, it's true in some ways because you could take that experience and brush it off and then back to everything else, or then continue to do 100 journeys of ayahuasca, never have the integration piece. So that's really important that you had some of those habits in place and you had a structure of support.
When it's hugely important. And because, again, not being like too experienced into this realm, like I said, I'm at like a year now and like 7 journeys. So the first time I actually was physically present and guided somebody else, I was on my first like major journey and my 3rd minor. I had 2 other like very small journeys in between there. But 2 of my ex-teammates really wanted this type of therapy, and for the right reasons, because they were the same disaster that I was. Things are not going well. But neither one of them had the same breakthrough exactly like I did. And that was, in retrospect, because they didn't have those integration pieces prior to. Now, that first journey did still help them, and it's helped them do the integration piece, and I think that will ultimately lead them to the breakthrough experience down the line. So it can help both ways, for sure. But yeah, like you said, you can't just take drugs and be better. Like that's not how any of this works. It's never going to work that way.
Yeah. And like for me, my journey of, people know my history, of abstinence sobriety because of this addiction and all these things. Like I did a lot of research. I did a lot of, I already had a lot of practices in place. And I was 15 years into my recovery process before I started. Some people don't have 15 years. They have 15 minutes where they're going to take their life. Yeah. So there's all these different levels of a spectrum of where people are at. For me, I had a lot of time under my belt. I had an integration coach I hired. I had so much to support myself to start on my journey. And then I started with microdosing. And then eventually I also took a training in microdosing through the 3rd wave. And then eventually I took a very, very intense training that was a trauma-informed facilitator training called 5. And people who've listened to previous podcasts, Joelle and Victoria, who run Tindava and the 5 platform, I have an episode of them. They're coming out soon. You'll be able to hear about it. But I did a 1-year robust training that was a trauma-informed facilitator training in Mexico. And that was because of these experiences were so big for me that I was scared that people really would be destabilized and really would get injured.
Oh, yeah.
So, that's why I chose to do that. But, and then I can also connect you, Clay, to some of these, and maybe one of these resonates for you for a training too.
That would be awesome.
This sounds like it's the way right now for you. I'm curious though, speaking about that, what is your vision and your highest intentions that you're bringing to reality right now?
This is, I believe, the road that I'm supposed to walk. I believe that, again, these visions, this stuff came to me specifically because I have enough, street cred and time or reputation, whatever, to be able to, people will come to me from my community and receive the help that they wouldn't receive otherwise. And it's extremely funny. This is true. I've seen this play out a number of times now. What I want also the veterans that are listening here to understand is most of the people that I've personally been part of their experience so far, their trauma didn't even come from the war. All right, it came from childhood or something unrelated to combat. Maybe it was just getting screwed over by the military process or something like that. So you don't need to feel like that A, you're a weirdo for needing some help, or B, that you had to see a bunch of people get their heads lopped off in order to need this process. That's absolutely not true. If it was things that you saw them with, buddy, will help with that too. But for most of my people, it's been something kind of shockingly unrelated. But it will still, you still have to process it.
Well, I'm extremely honored, Clay. We've had a really short relationship. I can't wait to build our relationship together. And this, I think this is a profound conversation, and we're going to get it out to as many people as possible. Tell people how they can find you, how they can work with you, find out your books and everything.
Sure. So I'm on Twitter. I'm way off the res there. My books are available on Amazon. I've got my website called ratthewendigo.com. I'm trying to figure out where I fit in the integration piece. But I feel like that's my journey for the next little while. But still, get a hold of me. If nothing else, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about where you can go, what you can do, take the first steps. And it's funny, I want to come back and have this conversation in a year or two, because I feel like right now I'm an expert in the beginning steps, which is cool, because, you need those guys too. But But yeah, and the other thing I'm going to have to say is like, just don't be afraid. Know that there's something out there that will help you.
Yeah, we're definitely going to have you back on 100%. So, this is July 2024. I'd say we get you back on in 6 months or so and hear how the journey's going, get an update. So yeah, I'm really excited. There's no doubt we'll get you back on. I think it's extremely important. You've inspired me to reach out to other veterans as well to hear their story.
Awesome.
We're about to see a decision of MDMA assisted therapy being legal or not, therapeutically. So we're in this huge time of change and possibilities. And I think your story getting out there is really, really key. So was, I don't know, just a great honor. Thank you so much for coming on today. This has been great.
Jesse, thank you, man. It's been a great honor for me too, man. This is, it's funny. It's actually really kind of actually therapeutic to talk about too. But you have to talk with a lot of times with somebody that knows what the process is like. But man, thanks for having me on. Thanks for everything you've done. And I can't wait to talk about this more offline with you personally, just about some other stuff. But thanks for helping me get this story out.
Yeah, for sure. So definitely reach out to Clay and let's go ahead and make this conversation normalize this conversation, get the help people need and more alternative options. So thank you, my brother. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thanks for watching today's episode. Your support means the world to me. So thank you for liking and subscribing to the YouTube channel and to this podcast. We've got amazing content and amazing interviews coming out soon. So thanks again. Enjoy your day. Sending love and blessings to you all.